It happened the third week since I left Germany. We made so many promises. It feels like years have passed since then. My mother wrote to me when I was at the training camp, but aboard the vessel, there was no way for me to receive her letters. I think after a while, she simply stopped writing altogether. I have still been writing back, and now a stack of unsent letters sits by my side journaling my days, and I have been reading them for comfort once night falls. Where I grew up, there was mostly farmland. I had never seen the coastline, the rocky beaches of France or England only existing in my mind. Images formed from descriptions in storybooks, where waves crashed upon the shore like cymbals, winds howling like the lonely siren's call, ships taking to the sea in search of adventure or lost treasures of priceless jewels and gold. It sounded so glamorous then. At the camp, I learned I would be piloting a U-boat with a small group of soldiers. Back home, I was always playing with my father's tools, fixing the radio when the signal died out, or tinkering with equipment parts I found at the refuse pile outside of town. I professed my aspirations to be an engineer unabashedly, but my mother discouraged me. She said girls must stay at home to do the cooking and the mending. Therefore, the commanders thought I would be an ideal candidate for manning a German undersea vehicle, because I would know how to fix whatever broke. I was excited to see the ocean, but my joy was short-lived.
We're stopping at the next station. We're ready to get off.
We were bussed 3 hours to the coast in rickety, hot buses, duffels filled with our meager possessions crowding our laps. We were given a briefing and our first sets of orders, then shuffled hurriedly into our cramped metal quarters. I smelled the salt but for a moment, and then it was gone, replaced by the smell of sweat and oil, and discovered I was claustrophobic only once we set off.
Take it easy while you can.
My comrades and I watched the radar, endlessly spinning with little else in sight, fix the leaks which would occasionally spout between shoddily welded panels of steel, and took turns manning the periscope, staring out at the vast Atlantic without truly seeing it. But when it surrounds you on all sides, the ocean is not exciting. It is instead endless and dark, like the sky if there were no stars, a trap lying in wait to swallow us whole, and every horizon appeared to be the edge of the world itself. The mountains of emptiness I saw upon opening the hatch haunted my dreams nightly. Occasionally, we received a telegram, the soldiers proficient in Morse code hastily scratching out the messages written in the dots and dashes that crackled over the air. Sometimes they even contained orders from Colonel or Secretary Dernberg himself, but were usually coordinates of enemy ships. Tirelessly, we sailed onward, gliding noiselessly under the waves. With my short haircut and tightly bound chest, it is difficult to tell that I am female, and the square jaw I inherited from my father, coupled with the small breasts from my grandmother, helped maintain the illusion well. However, in such a small space, it is impossible to continue hiding the truth indefinitely. I always figured they would find out eventually. And no matter how much the look in the eyes of my fellow soldiers revealed that they were all too aware, none of them ever spoke a word of it. When things are quiet, I dream of the summer days when I used to braid flower chains into my long blonde hair with my sister, our dresses streaked with grass stains from kneeling in the sunny pasture beside our cottage. In the black of midnight, an echoing beep from the sonar disrupted my reverie. Early on in the war, our fatherland had declared the ocean surrounding the United Kingdom a war zone to protect German shipping lines, and it was the task of the U-boats and their crews to patrol and protect these waters. On the following Wednesday, we received information that a ship carrying war munitions from the United States to England would be entering the war zone between May 5th and May 8th. It was the task of our vessel, SMU-20, to prevent those supplies from reaching our enemies. We were told nothing more but to attack on sight without warning, despite this order being a violation of the cruiser rules. Any personnel doing Navy work in recent months knew that Great Britain had been breaking the rules as well, and as such, the seas were untamed, and no matter how ruthless, any shot was fair. On nights when I couldn't sleep, the sound of waves too threatening to relax me, I thought fondly back to the farm. The rooster that woke us up daily at sunrise was thin and glossy, his black feathers shining almost green in the rising sun. There was a cat who lived in the barn and caught mice for us. As thanks, we gave her a small bowl of milk every evening, and sometimes she was permitted to sleep on my bed. I remember in the spring of my 10th year, she had a litter of kittens. When they grew old enough to wean, we shared them with our neighbors, who also had barns with mice. We had goats, and made cheese from their milk. There were also 2 chickens, but they were old, and we only got eggs every so often. When we were lucky to find a few in the nests, we feasted like kings on homemade breads and cakes, fried eggs with breakfast, and hard-boiled eggs served cold. My father's barn used to hold 1 horse, which he used for pulling the wagon, but later he sold the horse in order to buy a fancy set of tools, which he used to fix cars. There were only 3 cars in the whole village, but he was the only person who knew how to fix them. So he made a decent living. He was the one who first taught me mechanics, and who made me love fixing all kinds of machines. In my bunk, I silently wondered how he took his oldest daughter's departure to fight in the military, and if he would be proud that she was working on a submarine, fixing things like he did back home, as I never wrote about father in the letters I had received at the base. On the afternoon of May 7th, our ship was 18 kilometers off Ireland's coast. Suddenly, there was a shout from the periscope. The ship had been spotted. The name he read off her bow was the RMS Lusitania. I was struck by how beautiful the title was for a simple cargo and munition ship. But we were in position, and the moment of opportunity was brief. Several of us scrambled out of the hatch, loaded the shell into the barrel of the cannon, and when I heard the fire, I always followed my orders. Now, I realize how important it is to question what I am told, not to follow instructions mindlessly, like a sheep. Watching from the top, a fireball destroyed the starboard side, before the boom of the explosion was heard. But then I began to see small figures moving across the fiery deck, and I noticed the lifeboats, now from the railing, but beginning to drop quickly. I could hear screaming, and even witness silver burning bodies slip out into the water, a desperate bid to extinguish the fires that melted the flesh from their bones. For nearly 20 minutes, the flames and the people they consumed were reflected in my dilated pupils, until the Lusitania finally sank beneath the choppy waves, oil caught aflame licking across its surface. We returned to the base with the high praise of our commander, Walter Schweiker, our supervising officer. 1,198 passengers and crew had perished, 128 of whom were American. The burning ship reappears again and again in my dreams, the lifeboats, the jumping figures awaiting me every time I close my eyes, and the intense heat of the flames baking me feverish and delirious every night. And the mere thought of it, the taste of bile creeps into my throat, tangy like metal. Most times I cannot help but follow by reaching into a bucket until my stomach is violently empty and I can only heave dryly. I heard the sergeant remark the night of our arrival that the sinking was a shame, but avoidable. The German embassy in the United States had planted a warning in American newspapers cautioning passengers on the dangers of sailing on the Lusitania. This was more than a coincidence. This was a planned attack, and I, a trained soldier, hadn't known. Why hadn't they told us? I am a murderer with blood on my hands. Blood that cannot be washed away by ocean water salty with the tears of the dying innocents, cannot be burned away by the hottest fire. I joined my country's forces to protect it, to follow my dreams of doing what I loved, to escape my destinies that bound me to my home. And now I have killed so many, and my dreams are shattered. Once the gun has been fired, there is no putting the bullet back in the chamber. A wound will still remain. In my mind's eye, the farm burns along with my family, exploding from somewhere inside like the ship that I sank, flames eating away at everything I've ever known, and bitter smoke blotting out the sun. There is no returning to the life that nurtured me into a kind and moral woman. They could not forgive me. So I am sitting here, in the barracks on a Sunday in late May, with a revolver pressed to my head and writing my story. The killers in turn must be killed. We must atone for every sin. Christ did so for us, and we must do so for him. With my finger on this trigger, I pray to God that my own blood upon this fall will begin to make amends for the innocent blood spilled by my actions. Please, please, whomever reads this, tell my family that I love them truly and dearly. And when they ask you, how could she do something like this, tell them she did not know.